It's funny sometimes how things can ultimately play out. Because a couple of months ago, when the Jets made the move with the Colts to go up from 6 to 3, giving up 3 second-round picks, 2 that they had here in 2018 and 1 that they had in 2019, everybody knew what that meant. Is that the Jets were hot for a quarterback. And they were bound and determined to go up and get a quarterback. It was just really weird at the time when the deal happened that in order to make that happen, knowing that the Browns, for all intents and purposes, were dead to rights on taking a quarterback at number 1, you were either A, gambling on the Giants not taking a quarterback, so you could have your choice of the rest of them at number 3, or B, you had such a similar grade on 3 of the quarterbacks that to you it didn't make a difference if guy A went 1 and guy B went 2. Guy C would still be there at 3, and you'd feel very happy about that. Just felt kind of weird at the time, but it did feel like the Jets made the initial move they needed to get in position to ensure, no matter what, that they were going to come out of this draft with a quarterback. Because that's what had to happen. Outside of the Cleveland Browns, there's no team in the league, perhaps, that needs a young franchise quarterback more than the New York Jets. And until they get that guy, anything that they do doesn't matter. And until they get that guy, they will be one of the laughing stocks of the league. And that's just the way it works. So you knew going into this draft that the Jets probably were going to be hot on a quarterback. And ultimately we found out that they were. And what's crazy is how the draft plays out. Like a couple of months before, a lot of people would have thought the Jets at 3 would have potentially been picking between Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, and Josh Allen. Like those would have been the guys. And the way the draft played out, Baker Mayfield wasn't there, which a lot of reports had the Jets being incredibly high on Baker Mayfield. Now, were those reports out there because there was an assumption that Sam Darnold was going to go number 1 to the Browns? Perhaps. But that's not ultimately what happened. Baker Mayfield did. So now the Jets find themselves, Baker Mayfield's going 1. What are the Giants going to do? There had been some reports that the Giants weren't that high on the quarterbacks in this class outside of Sam Darnold. And if Darnold was there, maybe ownership would push to take him. The Giants take Saquon Barkley. So all of a sudden the Jets, the Jets, Jets! After all these years of hoping and wishing and praying and searching for a young franchise quarterback, they get the guy that seems to be perfectly suited for them. The guy that a couple of months before when they made that trade perhaps, they couldn't have had any real inclination or reason to believe he would have been there. They had Sam Darnold fall into their lap at number 3. Like if you're a Jets fan, you're in the Jets organization, you had to be thrilled by the development. You had to be thrilled by the way that everything played out. You didn't have to give up a first-round pick next year to get your potential franchise quarterback this year. And in this case, you get the guy that you've been targeting potentially for a year. And how ironic it works out, as it was pointed out to me on Twitter. All the talk about the Suck for Sam campaign, and ultimately we're thinking the Jets had won too many games and they got themselves way out of the Sam Darnold sweepstakes. They didn't. Sam Darnold ended up being their guy, for Christ's sakes, after the Jets traded up from 6 to 3. Funny how the world works sometimes. Now, giving up 3 second-round picks is a big price. I don't want to dismiss that, especially for a team that's as talent-barren on their roster as the Jets are on both sides of the ball. You ultimately would like to get your quarterback and be able to have those 2 second-round picks this year, the second-round pick next year, to be able to help out that young quarterback. Because God knows you got to help him in all areas. But ultimately, if you don't get the quarterback, it doesn't matter. And if you get the right quarterback, giving up 3 second-round picks will feel like stealing. It absolutely will. Do you think the Eagles regret the price that they gave up in order to go up and get Carson Wentz? Hell no, they don't. You think the Rams regret giving up what they gave up in order to move up for Jared Goff? Hell no, they don't. And they shouldn't. They absolutely shouldn't. If you get the guy right, everything else seems to find a way to figure out for you. So Jets fans, you feel like maybe you finally got your guy? Although last time you went to quarterback at USC in round 1 and made a trade up to get him, it was Mark Sanchez. Butt fumble and everything. But Sam Darnold feels like potentially a different type of quarterback for them. And you, I would think, have to be thrilled that this team finally drafted somebody on the offensive side of the ball in round 1 for the first time since Mark Sanchez in 2009. How many times I've talked about it over the past several years that it's been a repeated failure of this organization to continue to draft every year in round 1, whether they have 1 first-round pick or 2, on the God-blessed defensive side of the football, and their defense isn't anywhere near the best in the damn league. They finally drafted somebody on the offensive side of the ball in round 1, and for me, in my opinion, it was the perfect right choice for them. Like, I thought Sam Darnold was the guy for the Jets if all things could play out well. And it worked out that way. And they finally went offense in round 1, Jets fans. They have a clue maybe in that organization. And hell, let's double down. For the first time since 2009, they devoted 2 of their first 3 picks that they used to offensive players. What a novel damn concept. And even the 1 pick they spent on a defensive player was on a defensive tackle from Fort Hays State named Nathan Shepard, who's a pretty talented kid. Yeah, 25 years old, not ideal, but you got him in round 3. He's a pretty talented guy, should be able to contribute immediately with Leonard Williams there on that defensive line. Looking at Chris Herndon, the tight end from the Miami, he could potentially have some low-end starter potential going forward. Fatukasi, the defensive tackle from UCONN in round 6, is a big dude up the middle who specializes as a run stuffer. You know, you might have your future Snacks Harrison there. Who knows? I absolutely loved the pick of Parry Nickerson, the corner from Tulane. I had a second-round grade on the guy. He had size, speed, and ball skills, and the Jets got him in round 6. It felt like stealing. And even the Cannon kid from Virginia State, while I didn't have a draftable grade on him, you know, he's got some potential to contribute as a role player. There weren't a ton of picks here, mind you, but ultimately, I liked some of the other players they took, and most importantly of all, when all is said and done, the Jets can actually pat themselves on the back because it feels like they got something right. They freaking got a quarterback. Not just that, the quarterback we were talking about a year ago, that they had to start a Suck for Sam campaign, and all that shit didn't matter. They won more games than they were planning to or supposed to, then traded up only to number 3, and they still got their dude. And there's a big fundamental part of me that believes that they were so hot on Baker Mayfield again because they had no thought or reason to believe that Sam Darnold was going to be there at 3. And when he was, they were doing backflips. And you have to believe they were doing backflips and are continuing to do backflips. This could be that moment in time that the Jets organization's future was changed dramatically. Now, if Sam Darnold is not that dude and it does not work out that way, then I feel really, really bad for you Jets fans because I don't know how much more you're supposed to take. But I feel like this is the start of something really good for the Jets. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it is a good, necessary, vital first step, a mountain that they had to climb, and it feels like with being able to get Sam Darnold at number 3, they got to that summit, and now it's time to tackle the next mountain and get better.